Jeff Apodaca,
Eric Strauss.
best looking guy around on television, right? Come on, you know that's true.
I have a face for radio, so we'll
welcome
leave it
to
at
Let's
that.
Meet
There
in
we
the
go.
Middle. This week we're talking about stuff. So, you know, during the campaign, I got booted a couple of progressive environments because I'm not against cutting down our oil and gas. And I kind of laughed because this week, oil and gas, and I think we need to do it better, but this week in the headlines, oil and gas, we're expecting all-time high $7.8 billion in revenue from the state. Looks like another 1.2 million or 1.2 billion in surpluses next year. So, again, we're going to be talking about.
Remember, Michelle Lujan Grisham came into a surplus,
about $2 billion. Yeah,
$2 billion surplus she came into as the blue wave swept over New Mexico.
Well, I think
so
we got.
There was a lot of Pavlovian politicians, that's for sure.
Well, I think we got to have a show about how we're going to spend that money.
Yes, 7-foot alligator found in a Santa Fe home. And
what?
Right. And my question was, either they're missing a lot of cats in the neighborhood, or people are mysteriously, like, why would you keep a 7-foot alligator? And somehow, how does a 7-foot alligator connect to education and activities?
I have no idea.
That's my teaser for you.
There's certain places I won't play golf in Florida because of alligators. There's definitely places I won't go.
He's going to be arrested, right?
I would
Serious
think so.
fine, jail time, because he has an alligator living in a home in a baby pool without a permit. Right?
I would be his neighbor?
I would love to, number one, know, did he raise the alligator do they have a kindred bond now? Like when the alligator is removed, is he like, I miss you, man. I miss you a lot.
I got a feeling if that alligator's hungry, he's going to eat that leg.
Yes, and here's the thing. He was underdeveloped but overfed because apparently the guy didn't know exactly how to keep the alligator.
Well, other news, we're going to be talking about education today. And other news is we have a new Secretary of Education, a new Secretary of PED. I don't know, people are calling me all the time, like, what happened, because they think like me and the governor talk all the time.
Which you should.
By the way, we don't talk that much.
I don't think you talk at all.
But clearly, we had a transition at the top level, and today we're going to be talking about education, so it kind of feeds into that. I purposely didn't reach out to the new secretary, Ryan Stewart, who's from Philadelphia. You look at his background, I do think his background might mirror a little bit.
But why do we always go out of state to find people to run our school systems in New Mexico? You're telling me there's not talented enough people at $130,000 a year. We can't find somebody from New Mexico that's been a teacher that knows our schools to be the Secretary of Education.
Where you and I are going to agree on, and I think we're going to agree on a lot of things, because education is really, it's nonpartisan. But
by the way, real quick, I will bet you right now on air. I talk on 50,000 watts across 5 states, all over the state.
I thought it was 100,000 watts, by the way.
It's 50,000 watts. It's the fourth largest bandwidth in North America.
Correct.
So my
That's KKOB radio.
So any given time you can tune in, and you're talking to 10, 15,000. Anyways, you're talking to a lot of people. I will bet you right now on our television show that Michelle Lujan Grisham will not come on my radio show. And I'll reach out.
I'm not going to take that back.
I'll reach out once a month.
But hold on, but when I'm on your show, the Viper Room kind of comes after me pretty aggressively, and I'm kind of like a...
But you do fine with the Viper. It's not about that. It's about being able to defend your ideas. But anyways, man was arrested for force-feeding his cat meth and beating his girlfriend.
I saw that.
And you're like, how on earth are you a drug guy and you want to force feed your cat meth? And what does that have to do with education?
He probably didn't force feed. He probably just left it laying around, and the cat probably ate it.
No, he force fed it.
He force fed it?
Yeah, force fed it. And beat his girlfriend.
Well, and he's probably walking the streets with our. And last week's show was about crime and stuff. So
so it'll be catch and release.
Well, it'll be a little strange.
Yes.
So anyway, today's show we're going to be talking about education.
Yep.
We actually have a lot of great guests on today.
A lot of great guests.
We're going to be talking about not only education, but about budgeting, and we're budgeting an extra $500 million. We got the superintendent angle, we got teachers and parents angles, but also where you and I talk a lot about is we're going to be talking about activities, how we keep our kids engaged and how we keep them more involved.
And I was just at the movie. I want to share a commercial I saw before the movie started, which kind of disturbed me.
Well, let's get going.
Yep.
Let's meet in the middle.
Let's do this.
In a time of a divided America, two people from different points of view sit down to talk about the problems, to talk about ideas, to talk about life, and to find common ground. It is now time for Let's Meet in the Middle with your hosts Eric Strauss and Jeff Apodaca.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Eric Strauss, Jeff Apodaca. Joining us now is Stan Rounds, the Executive Director of New Mexico Superintendents, an organization that has 89 superintendents strong, and Brooke Bassan, PTA Mom of the Year and City Council candidate for District 4. So thank you guys for coming on. We're going to start off with, what you think, because we're talking about education. What is the greatest mistake you've seen made in American education, especially here in New Mexico, because we always hear how bad our schools are. I mean, you always hear how bad, what's wrong with American education.
Well, from my perspective, we've gotten into a situation where they think the further away you are, the more you know about what needs to happen locally.
Right.
And somehow that doesn't play for me. I was a superintendent in New Mexico for about 30 years, all over the state, as far as Hobbs, Las Cruces, Des Moines, New Mexico, Alamogordo. And what I found was that if you rely on your local community, if you focus in on what needs to happen for your kids, there are 89 districts in New Mexico. There are 89 different stories, 89 different needs. We've developed a system that doesn't flex, a system that doesn't support, and I think that's something we all need to work on.
Yeah. What do you think, Brooke? I mean, as a mom, Brooke, you're a mom. You have four, actually, Brooke's kids and our kids go to school together.
Gotcha.
And you know what? She's running for District 4 City Council.
Yes.
Next city council person from my district, at least. But anyway, Brooke's, you're a mom, PTA. She was Albuquerque Mom of the Year. From a mother's perspective, what do you think? What do you think about our educational system, public educational system?
Well, first, I was in New Mexico. I'm a New Mexico Mother of the Year.
Mother of the Year, yeah.
Thank you. But I think that a lot of this problem that I remember from being a child that grew up in Albuquerque and having kids now in APS, I wonder how much it has to do with us devaluing teachers and how we don't support them and we don't fund them, we don't believe in them, we don't encourage them like they used to be when my generation and when I was in elementary school and middle school, and teachers actually really were passionate and they actually knew they were appreciated in a way that they kept going and they kept being motivated to do a really good job with that.
So in terms of boots on the ground, because you've been dealing with PTAs, and what are the grumblings generally amongst the moms? Is it the teacher or is it the system? Or has the system become just another cog the teacher become another cog in the system?
I absolutely think that the system is a huge, huge factor in what is failing us right now. And I think that, we have a system that is prioritizing things that aren't really as important as they should be. Again, teachers, the students. We need to be using our funding to benefit children and the teachers that are in hot cubicles without air conditioning. And we need to be able to make sure they have safe water to drink at school. And instead of spending our money on administrative offices that are beautiful and functional, but yet not, again, the priority.
Well, Stan, this is, one of the things we want to talk about is again, the whole show's about meeting in the middle. I think a lot of us are going to agree on this topic today. But an example is, Stan, we've talked. If you look at the federal budget, this year we're going to get about $790. We're going to get about $800 million from the feds. Next year we're expecting a $36 million cut in that budget. But my point is, we rely and you have to follow guidelines if you're going to accept that money, right? Texas does not accept that money. And so my point is, as a superintendent, we talked about this. We believe in community up. We believe in educating from the community up. On the campaign trail, I got attacked sometimes because I believe in, all right, let's just take the money, grant funding, let's just take the money and let's educate our kids ourselves. As a superintendent, across the board, what have you seen from different districts?
Well, so New Mexico is a state of small districts, as an example. Right. We have 39 districts under 200. And so when you take the federal dollar, the way it's set up, and send it down into the field, if you're in Albuquerque, Las Cruces, where I was superintendent, you have some means you can actually put enough dollars into programs to make it work. But think about this for a minute. I know of one school district that has a whopping 65 students, K-12. So how do you get, if it's on a per pupil basis,
Yeah.
enough funds to generate sufficiency for what needs to happen for those students? Well, it just doesn't happen. We try regional education cooperatives, we do a number of things like that, but when you get to the end game of the analysis, there's insufficient resource. And of course, I'm a proponent of pushing it all together, eliminating a lot of the rules and letting local districts, local folks decide what kids need and making that happen. I'm sorry, I don't believe we're failing everywhere in New Mexico schools. I was in a district in Las Cruces where we raised our graduation rate up above the national average. It can be done, but you know how we did that? We got rid of a lot of the state control issues and began to push out local things that work for kids, worked with parents, work for teachers. If you don't value your teachers, and by the way, the partnership of your parents, you're going to fail this mission. It takes every adult on deck.
Brooke, being on the PTA, tell us a little bit about, because PTA, it's all about raising money for your schools, and you know, you're very involved in PTA in our school district and trying to raise money. What issues do you guys see that the teachers see or the school's needs are that the PTA is helping out?
Well, for example, our primary funding that our PTA does at North Star is that we pay for the technology program.
Right.
APS used to offer part of the funding and the annual salary for our technology teacher, and then they slowly whittled that away, and then we ended up covering the cost and the general membership votes, and we decided to go ahead and pay for that. So in this day and age, I think technology is something that we need to be teaching our children right out of the gate, along with reading and arithmetic.
And in fact, one of our neighbors actually started the coding program, blanking out the name.
Open source kids.
Open Source Kids.
So less for the PTA, that program dies.
Correct. The children, grades
Without us
K
funding,
through 5
without
would not
PTA and
get
the neighborhood.
technology.
Yeah, and you go to other states, they're literally doing coding or programming within the public school systems that are jobs of today.
Right. In one of the largest, wait, did you know that APS is one of the largest districts in the nation?
Yeah, in fact, I think in the top 12, I believe.
Yeah.
In total student size, and by the way, in geography, they're very, very large. It's a really difficult issue from a superintendent's chair to figure out how you manage the diversity in a district like Albuquerque, like Las Cruces. And that's part of where you have to reach into the system, into all the folks that are there, and collaborate with each other to get it done. And you can get it done, by the way.
So Stan, when you look at those twin towers up on Louisiana, and they're massive ivory white twin towers. No, it will,
By the way, those twin towers are half empty.
No, they're filled now. They're filled top to bottom.
I know.
So they're filled. When they first opened them, they were half empty, but now there's something on every floor. You have that kind of bureaucracy going where the twin towers keep rising, and you have PTA moms raising money for a coding program at a school. Where's the disconnect there? You know what I mean?
Go ahead.
So the disconnect there really is understanding how do you balance all of the priorities. I'm going to defend a little bit what happens in the Twin Towers you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of requisites. Did you know that the federal government required for the Las Cruces Public Schools, which had about 25,000 students instead of 84,000 students like Albuquerque, it required enough that it cost me 100 positions just to meet the federal requisites to earn the money, just to manage what they require the record keeping to be. And that's what people don't know. And that's why I talk about if you could eliminate those lines, if you could get it into a consolidated financing structure and let people show your end results rather than have to do so much minutia in keeping track and records and things like that. You see, Stan's opinion, we've overdone accountability. We've overarched the look-in that we think the government should have. My goodness, public schools in New Mexico, if you look at our Constitution, we have a judge, by the way, that ruled in favor of this, is pretty well set to lift what happens in New Mexico
and
schools.
I think one of the things that we don't talk enough about is these, by the way, Governor Richardson's the one that elevated the Secretary of Education to a cabinet position. Before that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stan, before that it was actually done from the community up, superintendent up, and it left a lot of power within the community to educate our kids. I believe in that system more than the system we have today. I just don't believe top down. I think what I'm hearing from everybody is top down doesn't work. Between the federal grants and between what we looked at, PED, the federal grant money, $800 million, we have found about $280 million at PED that literally go outside our state for outside contracts that I don't see where it's benefiting our kids.
Our Secretary of Education is outside of our state.
No, I get
Right,
that.
right,
but-
I heard that. So
Yeah.
if I may, too, with what you're saying about the minutia, I think that it's important to realize that on many levels, I think the federal government and a lot of different avenues of government are starting to get into the minutia of it. I mean, we're talking crime, we're talking education. It's about crossing T's and dotting I's, and I think that that's coming at a huge cost to our society, our children, our community.
Stan, if they right now, let's eliminate some of the federal money coming in. How many positions would you free up to go back into the classroom?
Oh, I have no idea what that would be because you would lose the federal dollars.
dollars.
Texas loses the federal dollars. In New Mexico, the federal dollars pay for free student lunches for those that are poor. Texas doesn't enjoy that. We have what's called Title I dollars, which are for students who are economically disadvantaged and educationally disadvantaged. So you would lose the dollars and, in my opinion, lose the people who are doing those programs. So it may be, that's why I like the aggregation of resource and allowing states to have the ability to design what needs to happen in their state. I've been all over the nation in my new job, and I'll tell you something, every kid in America is special, and every kid in America deserves a good education, but every kid in America is different than another kid in America to certain extents. And in New Mexico, we're very unique. Look at our Native American population.
Yep.
Look at, as an example. That maybe is one of our worst performances we have statewide.
Well, and you know, everybody always goes, I pulled this report today, everybody always goes back to the money we spend per kid. We're actually ranked 30th. We're actually ranked 30th on per student. But you can't really go off that because New York City is ranked #1, but they're ranked 22nd. But then you look at Massachusetts, who's
So explain what you just said a little bit.
so everybody always goes back to the cost per student. In
Correct.
New Mexico, they always say, well, we spend more than anybody else. We're actually about in the middle. We're ranked about 30th on the expenditures per student. But New Mexico's always going to be more expensive to educate because of our rural communities, because of the impoverished communities. And so I tell people all the time, but what you have to look at is we're ranked 48th in teacher salaries. Ranked 48th in teacher salaries. Even, and we haven't seen that kick up yet, but even with that, I mean, APS, 800 and something teachers short, right? I think they hired like almost 500 this year.
Yeah.
But as we finish up the segment, tell me, Brooke, as a mom, PTA, give me one thing that you think we can help solve some of these issues that we can kind of talk to our legislators with that might help us educate our kids a little bit better.
Well, I think going back to the legislation and with the funding that you're talking about, it's something that we have to keep in mind is not a one-size-fits-all. You can't just send the same amount of money to every single district throughout the state of New Mexico because you do have certain kids that need more than others. And I think that in order to fulfill those needs, you have to be able to balance that with being a little bit more specific.
And same thing, Stan.
I'm going a little bit different track. We have to learn how to sustain what we fund.
Yes.
And right now, you talked about oil and gas and things like that are out there. We have a significant future wave that we have to figure out. We need to build a house that stands. We have to fund it over time. We have to pay people what they're worth. Do you know that we are in a horrible shortness as far as teachers? in New Mexico?
Oh, yeah.
We've got to figure out how to get them back in. I'm worried about that future. I'm worried about how we are able to solve that as a state.
And that's, speaking from a teacher's perspective, it seems like we jump from program to program to program, and nothing ever sticks. They just keep throwing stuff against the wall. Thanks for coming in today.
Well, I
That was a
think,
good
you know,
segment.
is there anything that we didn't cover that you guys wanted to cover real quick?
I could talk for 3
We could
hours.
talk for another
Right,
10
right.
minutes.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things I think we agree on is we would rather have our funding ourselves than have to follow federal
Right,
guidelines. So, but thank you so much, and I appreciate you guys joining us today. Stay tuned after this break.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
We are connected by rivers, by mountain ranges, by unique culture. But what connects us more than ever? Renewable energy from wind and solar. P&M delivers renewable energy every day to our homes, businesses, and institutions across the state.
And they are committed to 100% emissions-free energy by 2040.
After all, we call this home too. P&M, together for New Mexico.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 Brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss. Joining us in this segment is going to be Lawrence Walsh, author of Go Get That Rabbit. And this is a great book if you have a teenager. Thanks for coming in today. Sherry Lober, National Board Certified, a Golden Apple Award-winning, decorated, 30-year veteran educator here in New Mexico, and working with kids. Thousands of teenagers' lives change because of these two people in the building today. So we're very humbled, honored, blessed to have you. I wanted to start with just why you became a teacher.
Well, you know, it goes back to Scout Camp. I worked on staff at Scout Camp back when I was a kid, and I loved working with young people. I went to college and took a wrong turn, majored in business instead of education, but I corrected that after 20 years, and my second career is teaching, and I've loved every minute of it.
That's awesome. Sherry, why did you become a teacher?
Honestly, it was not in my master plan. I got my degree in marketing and public relations and went out to the job market, and literally before I graduated, I got offered a job teaching, and I thought, I'll try it for a couple of years, and then I'll go into the business world. So that was 31 years ago.
But let's be very clear, because there's this myth that those who can't teach, not only are they successful business people with high-end degrees, but they're really good teachers as well.
They chose teaching for that reason.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I'm a father of twin boys that are in public schools right now. We see the ups and the downs. I continue to keep pushing. We need more resources in the classroom. We need more resources in the classroom. We need more TAs. As teachers within the classroom, what's your number one frustration, and what's the number one thing that, if we can improve one thing, what would be that in the classroom?
I have a simple answer. What's your most valuable resource in that school?
The teacher.
The teacher.
Absolutely.
And we're completely undervalued. The whole process, even going back through this whole evaluation system, it was all on the premise of negative and punishment. Teachers go every day. We're in the trenches. We do it. Then we get dictated to from this administrative level of what we should be doing, yet we had a Secretary of Education that had never been in a classroom. We now have a new Secretary of Education that's not even from here. It's very challenging when you're there every day. I am a product of APS. I came from Cibola High School. You know, we're there every day. We know our community. We know our parents. We know our kids. We're the most valuable asset, yet we're not even motivated and pushed in a positive manner.
And you know, she makes a good point about a year ago. We were at a meeting, and Jackie, my wife, actually made this comment that not Lujan Grisham, but the former two governors and the former education secretary, those three people who basically were in control of educating our kids for 16 years, none of them had ever been parents before. So you do look at life a little bit differently.
Well, and here's the thing too, in terms of, did either one of you ever get any input about the evaluation system before it was rolled out?
I do not, and I still to this day can't understand how the points are calculated on that. It's totally confusing.
Not just confusing, I think they purposely keep the teachers uninformed because we're so busy teaching, we're so busy getting in there and doing what we need to do to make it right for kids. We really are reliant on what they're managing at that level. They made very little effort to inform us. They made very little effort to make it make sense. And that's a challenge across the board in our entire community.
So let me ask you a question. Last year, you didn't call it that, but my kids went through it, still had the PARCC test evaluation.
It's under a new name.
It's under a new name, and I get the evaluation.
Same but different.
Same but different.
But my kids are now in 5th grade. Last year they were in 4th grade. they literally are coming home telling me, Dad, why do I have to take this test? It doesn't really matter. Yeah. And then I talked to their teachers in our school, our elementary school, and our teachers were taking 4 to 5 weeks out of teaching my children to prepare for the test. Now, I understand we have to evaluate. I agree with that. I think teachers should be involved in the evaluation. Is that getting better with the new administration? I know the new secretary just started, but they've had 6 months to put it in play. What are you guys seeing as teachers now that's different than the last administration?
I haven't seen much of anything different yet.
So nothing really changed.
Nothing. And again, we get no information.
Uninformed.
Right. We get no information on what's going on. And here's something, let me tell you what would you call it, an oxymoron of all of this? We are pushed and encouraged to be creative, to meet every child's needs, to teach at differentiated levels. I've got to meet every single student's need in my class, which means I have to have different ways to assess them. On my level, I am pushed and motivated to differentiate my instruction. Yet at their level, they say one test to evaluate every kid. It's completely counterproductive to what we do as teachers. Differentiate your lesson, but when we assess you and we want to evaluate you, it's going to be one size fits all.
Right. We want these
let me ask you
check boxes.
Because Eric and I, go ahead, Lawrence.
And I think what people sometimes forget is to what Sherry's saying about the standard way we're evaluated. Teaching is an art, and you can't look at a piece of art. You can't look at one piece of art the same way you look at another piece of art. Yes, it's a career, and yes, there's certain benchmarks we have to meet, and there's certain things we have to cover in our curriculum, but delivering that is an art, and people tend to forget that sometimes. We roll our own personalities into what we do in the classroom.
Well, that's a good point, because Eric and I have talked about this. I have twin boys, and I, as a father, I have literally seen how boys learn differently. And depending on my son's teacher, the structure of that room versus the non-structure of that room, I see how well my kids learn. My biggest concern as a father with boys, and you're seeing these books, you're seeing middle school and high school kids, one of our biggest issues in the state of New Mexico, around the country, our boys are dropping out a lot quicker than girls are. As teachers, what do you see that we can do better between boys and girls, and how we can help both genders, because they learn differently?
Right. I don't know that it's a gender thing. I really think it's a parent thing. I really think it's a community thing. I think if we really want to change our school systems, we have to involve the community and the parents. If we can't get that support and that connection at the home level, we can only be 49% responsible for what happens. That 51%, that extra 1% has got to come from the parents and the students themselves. And it has to start very young, and it has to build through the system.
Are you guys seeing, the states now, okay, I'm sorry.
I've had employers hire students out of school. Construction companies, landscaping companies, hiring them for $18 an hour, and to a 16-year-old kid, that's really good money. Mm-hmm. And they think, they think that they're set for life. They're getting $18 an hour, but they're dropping out of school.
Yeah,
and they're going to be stuck. Then they're going to be stuck at that $18 an hour for the rest of their life, because they're not going to have any qualifications to get anything else. And if there's one thing we can do, and we need to tell employers to stop hiring students and requiring them to drop out of school.
Well, one of the programs we've talked about that we should be doing is trade skilled, kind of skilled internship, fellowship types. Yeah. So the kids are working, the kids have opportunities, so they do that, but not because they're dropping out of school.
Let me jump in on that, because at one point, those internships were highly supported on every level when we had career technical education. Yeah. And what happened was, instead of supporting them and pushing those teachers up who were monitoring and fostering those programs where they could go to work, get credit, stay in school, a component was you can work, but you have to pass your classes and stay in school. There was that connection. It was very successful. I'm not sure when it happened, but at some point they pulled the rug out from underneath all those teachers that were doing those programs. They stopped funding it. Right. They stopped paying for it. We still offer it at our school, but we do it on a volunteer basis. We do not get paid to provide that. And so teachers, we're so passionate about some programs. We know this is vital. We're not going to give that up. We do it for free. And there you go. There's devaluing what teachers do again. They want to fix it. They've got to start valuing teachers and getting creative. I'm not just talking money. Give more incentive. I am an educator, and it costs me a fortune to educate my own kids. There was no support put in place because they pay you just enough to put you over the bar where you don't qualify for any assistance for your own children to go to college. I've educated thousands, and I didn't qualify for any assistance for my kids to go to college.
Let me ask you
real quick, hang on. So in terms of what do you think a base pay for a starting teacher should be?
Well, let's talk about it. What's base pay for a starting lawyer? What's base pay for a starting doctor? Because we're on some level even more valuable to our community than they are. Because we're not going to have doctors without teachers.
Exactly.
I'm national board certified. I stepped up, I got it done. That is passing that exam and that process the same as a lawyer would pass the bar exam. That put me on a national level. That at the national level says you are worthy, you're quality, you should be worth more. Yet it's not really recognized anywhere.
And in that level, that's almost like a PhD level kind of
Exactly.
education.
It was really
and that's,
hard.
And that's why, and in our plan, those starting salaries should be in the 70, 73, 75,000 because of the resource you put in there. Real quick though, I want to ask a question to both of you. Is our state is now funding public education by courts by over $600 million additional funding. We know a lot of it's going to pre-early education. Some of it was to extend school for 124 days. A lot of people didn't decide to do that. Are you seeing, and I know you're retired now, Lawrence, but are you seeing any resources from your teachers' friends? Have you seen any of those dollars come into the school system that's helping you out? Have you seen any difference at all with us increasing the budget by $600 million?
So that's a good idea. I don't know where that money goes.
Yeah.
Well, suppose it's going to early child education.
It doesn't go
programs.
What? Have you seen the studies where the money going in, I think 50 cents of the dollars actually make it back to the classroom?
Well, here's something interesting, and I just learned this today. So we hired 4 new district superintendents. Each district superintendent now hired 4 assistants, and under that, okay, the district ones are making 100 and something. Below that, they're making close to 100. But now they went down to teachers, and they're asking us as teachers to step up and take this position for a $5,000 stipend.
Yeah,
so we're going to do all that.
You could go
work,
all the meetings and do all the
report up,
planning.
Well,
report
wait a
up,
minute. The new administration has kicked up. The new administration has now kicked up more salaries. Are you seeing those salary increases yet?
Not yet. But we haven't, I think we just now signed our contracts.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus we have these, and it's probably a totally different pool of money, but we've got these brand new buildings that the district is building. And what for? I mean, there's a brand new professional development building. I believe it's somewhere in the...
Across from Milne.
Yeah,
Right.
across, well, there's another one.
Yeah.
They have
up
three.
on the
They
Mansion
have 3
Ranch
new
in
ones. They have
Louisiana,
3
I
new ones.
believe. And what are they doing in there?
And talk about jumping from program to program.
Well, I want to thank you guys today. It's been very insightful, so thank you so much. We also want to thank our sponsors, P&M, Indigo Mortgage, and Ryan's Sewing and Vacuum. We'll be right back after this message.
We are connected by rivers, by mountain ranges, by unique culture. But what connects us more than ever? Renewable energy from wind and solar. P&M delivers renewable energy every day to our homes, businesses, and institutions across the state.
And they are committed to 100% emissions-free energy by 2040.
After all, we call this home too. P&M, together for New Mexico.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss. You can find me on 770 News Radio KKOB. Joining us right now is Sally Marquez, Executive Director of NMAA, the first female athletic or executive director of an athletic association in the country.
In the country.
In the country. And Jessica Martinez, activities director at a Trisco Heritage High School. And that's a big, giant new school on the west side for people who don't know.
And you know,
So
we have,
thanks for coming in today,
Jessica
by the
and I
way.
have a little bit of an issue because last year, unfortunately, a Trisco High School beat Santa Fe High in the state championship
Yes.
game
Yes.
when we should have won it, by the way.
Yes, it happened.
No, just us three were texting. Us three were texting each other, and that was one of the things that.
Which does lead us down the rabbit hole of how, you know, Jeff's involved. He loves Santa Fe. The whole community's out there cheering on the team. How do activities help students stay in school? And Jessica, we'll start with you, and then I'd love to get Sally's take of more holistic, because she's in a bigger umbrella than you are.
I think the great thing about student activities is if you look at education as a whole, right, and if we're talking about holistic education of a child, how do we engage their body, mind, their heart, every part of that kid to help them be successful? Activities are so important because while kids may never take another math class, they may never sit in another English classroom, they will always be interested in music or dance, and those are the types of activities that if they are able to participate with adult mentorship, you know, have the support of a small group around them, it helps them to demonstrate more of the behaviors that are going to let them be academically engaged and ultimately successful, not just in school, but in life.
Yeah, and we've seen it throughout the years. You and I used to work together at Albuquerque High School, and you talk about a heck of a cheerleading coach, Holy mackerel.
No, I've been very involved in seeing what she's done at
She's
Trisco High School.
amazing, like literally amazing. The things she did with that program are out of sight. Sally, how have you seen at your level, because you're in a more umbrellaed level is what I mean. You see more schools, more districts, because you're at an executive level. How do activities help kids stay in school?
It's unbelievable. I think that you can see that kids statewide, whether you're coming from a rural community, a large community, it teaches kids about life. You know, we're education-based athletics and activities, and just like Jessica said, you know, they're learning how to cope, they're learning teamwork, they're learning all of these intangibles that they're going to need for the future. And if there's anything, I know we teach the math and we teach the English and we teach all of those subjects, but we teach the whole kid in athletic and activities. And what we're seeing is those kids that are involved in athletics and activities, they're not dropping out, they're not truant. They go to school they have a purpose. They have a support group around them, and they're the ones that are graduating at the higher rate.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, one of the things, you know, I played football in college. Sally, you played basketball. One of the things that kept me engaged, and I'll be very frank, you know, I was a good student, but I hated going to school, but because of sports, right? And we see that. A lot of the programs that we had when we were kids have been cut away, or I'm amazed, like we were talking about this the other day, and I like both of your perspectives. One of my sons, Gage, we're having a little bit of issue because he doesn't want to, you know, he was on a soccer team. Wasn't with any of his friends because it's a club. And when they lose, all his friends were kind of making fun of him. And what I learned very quickly with all these clubs that are popping up is, win or lose, when we were kids, the programs, activity programs, sports programs were tied to your elementary school, your middle school, your high school. So when you win or lose, you were winning and losing with your friends. With clubs, I'm not seeing that. And what I'm seeing is more kids are now being alienated away from some of the sports between clubs and athletics. And I know you're at a little bit different level because you oversee athletics, but within the school system, specifically Albuquerque and our rural communities, tell us a little bit what you're seeing that are different, that are hurting kids, or how can keep kids engaged.
I think the community, we're hurting in the community. And the reason I'm saying that is because we have this open enrollment choice where kids can go choose wherever they want to go to school. When we were playing, you just grew up wanting to be a monarch, wanting to be a bear, because that was in your neighborhood school. And right now there's so many choices that these kids get to make. You go back to that club world, and we talk about the clubs and the friendships that they make, but if you ask any single person, their memories will be at the high school level. Because that's who they walk the halls with, that's who they see every day in the classroom. And so education-based athletics, although we have club trying to take away some of the education-based athletics, but ultimately in New Mexico, our students are playing high school more than they are club. What's going on is our club programs are allowing our kids to play in the high school because they see the value of education-based athletics.
So, like with open enrollment, this is my big fear, is that like if a kid's going to a charter school, can coaches actually start recruiting the kid to come play sports for their high school? Do you see this a lot? Or what does the NMAA's take?
That's my job. That's my
so
job. I'm hired.
How do you stop it though?
Well, it's very difficult, but that's why I'm hired to make sure that in the state of New Mexico we have a level playing field. And every rule that we have, whether it's recruiting, following a coach, out-of-season coaching, all of that is to make sure that there's a level playing field. Those rules that we have at the NMAA, those are actually made and voted on by the member schools. So they always think, oh, Sally Marcus and the NMAA are not letting us participate. Well, my job is to work for the schools and to make sure that the rules that the schools have voted on, that we follow them.
Now, I want to say something to Jessica, because we're talking sports here, we're talking cheerleading and stuff like that, but like an example is Atrisco High School has a great film and television facility, film and television program. When I was at Univision, we tried to incorporate, that's actually how we met. We tried to incorporate the media. We're not just talking about sports or things like that. We're also talking about, trade skill opportunities. We're also talking about movies. And I mean, we have to look at different verticals. The film and television industry is becoming very big in our state, and even larger. They're looking for Latinos. You're in a school that's 85, 90% Latino. Tell us a little bit, besides some of the other activities we're doing, but those are programs, are you seeing funding? Are you seeing opportunities there for your kids?
Well, because those are co-curricular programs, they don't necessarily fall completely under my purview, right? So how they're funded is probably going to be more of an administrative question than an activities question. I do know that because there's a teacher in the classroom, there's an FTE funded position, right? So there's somebody there. They do receive funding for the equipment. I'm positive that money is not, unlimited, and that they get what they get from year to year. But yeah, there is funding. Now, do those things necessarily always fall under activities? No, not really.
Gotcha. And just for parents out there, there's this new thing, esports, right? Do you have a club at your school?
We do.
Okay, so we just got one. They were introducing coaches.
My kids are very excited about this, by the way.
They were introducing coaches at the beginning of the year, and our esports coach got up as like, I'm a coach too, Yeah. Can you tell me, so in terms of activities, you see it at Atrisco, but in terms of the NMAA, is esports falling under your purview?
Sure, the NMAA is the one who sanctioned esports. So it was a couple years ago that it became a national push out of the National Federation of High Schools. And esports is under that umbrella. And so we went to the board of directors, we saw a need. And where you see the need is, we just talked about what activities and athletics do for kids. We need to draw kids into every type of activity, whether it's a skateboard, whether it's TV. We just need to draw these kids in. Yeah. And esports was an area where there are kids out there that love to play video games. But now let's draw them into the schools, so now they have to follow scholastic eligibility rules. Yep. They learn teamwork. If you ever saw an esports competition in a high school, they have headsets on and they are talking back and forth just like you would at a football game as to the strategy that they're going to do, against their opponent. And it is a very, very neat environment where you're seeing a lot of kids. It's the one activity where you will see low socioeconomic, a high socioeconomic, an African American, Hispanic, a Native American, all on the same team, working together. It's not isolating anybody, it's bringing everybody together.
It's funny, we took our two boys over to La Cueva and we watched them do that, and that's exactly what I recognized and I noticed both in Santa Fe. And I told Jackie and I, maybe we're missing the boat, because my son this summer, he literally had all his friends playing, and where I was like the leader of sports and a leader of the football team, blah, 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 all of a sudden I saw Gage corralling his friends to play esports. They were strategizing with each other. So I literally sat there for an hour listening, and I was amazed at the leadership roles I saw them developing between their kids. What's going on in Atrisco with that?
Well, and I could tell you, I know earlier, Eric, you had talked about, how is a program like esports going to help kids be physically active? How are we, giving kids that opportunity? But I think that the bigger picture is, in education, we have opportunities to help kids be physically active, right? We have PE programs, and there's a channel that way. For activities, really, what we're trying to do is give every kid a place to fit. Give every kid a place and a way that they can make that school belong to them, that they can pitch in, that they can feel proud of themselves, that they can go to their peers and say, hey, you know, look what we did for all of us, not just for ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. In terms of the programs that you recreate, like we have a bowling team. Do you got bowling?
Yeah, we got a bowling team.
It's
huge, yeah.
And I guess at the end of the day, you know, old school in me sits there and goes, should you let her in varsity for esports? And now I guess I'm kind of coming around like, because my son's in esports at Ames. So he's a charter kid at Ames, and he just started, I forget the game. You hit a League of the one with the Rocket League.
Rocket League.
There you go, Rocket League. Yes, and it's hard.
Look,
I
man,
played it with him.
When my two 11-year-olds see a 15, 17-year-old kid win $3 million in the Fortnite National Championship, they both looked at me and said, "See, Dad?" That's all they said, right?
Right?
And so
and you're like,
it's tough. I mean, it's really tough.
Yeah, because old school in me, you're like me. You're like, you're in that on the,
But from an adult perspective, what are the kids? They're not going to win $3 million. We can't. It's just like all our athletes think they'll go get a D1 scholarship.
Right.
We have to look at what is it doing for those kids. It's bringing them into something they feel like they belong.
Right.
Yes, and my son did get a letter for esports, and he has a letter and it says esports. He was so proud of that letter because ultimately he was a basketball player and he didn't grow beyond 5'7".
Right.
So what other niche was he going to have at the school to be a part of? And esports was his love.
Well, I want to thank you guys today. It's been a great segment, how we keep our kids
See how quick
involved.
that went?
I'm telling you right now, thank you guys so much. We'll have a whole show on esports. I guarantee
No whole show. When we come back, we're going to wrap things up.
Yeah, we'll be back right after this. Thank you.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
We are connected by rivers, by mountain ranges, by unique culture. But what connects us more than ever? Renewable energy from wind and solar. P&M delivers renewable energy every day to our homes, businesses, and institutions across the state.
And they are committed to 100% emissions-free energy by 2040.
After all, we call this home too. P&M, together for New Mexico.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss. It's been a phenomenal show on education. We wanted to go down through the points of kind of where we met in the middle. But there's not much conflict here, and it doesn't have to be.
Well, and again, I
See, this is
agree.
the problem.
I agree.
In the red and blue, when we start to label each other so much, what really happens is we forget the commonality.
I agree.
And if there's one thing I've learned from this show is there's a lot of things we could come to the table on, especially in education.
Well, here's the thing. From all our guests, what we heard over and over and over is community involvement. Right? And that's one of the things that we've been pushing at Democrats for Democracy or pushing on the educational front. It has to go from the bottom up. I mean, Bill Richardson, I think, made a major mistake by elevating the superintendent position into a cabinet position, and now
that was a huge
mistake. In fact, I tell people all the time, my father, when he was governor in the 70s, restructured the state into cabinet.
He was the education governor.
He was, but he's a high school teacher, high school football coach. But he actually created the cabinet positions we live in today. Guess what? One position wasn't a cabinet position.
Yeah, the Secretary of Education.
Because he never had that. It was superintendents. Yeah. And he felt that, and I believe the same way, community up, and that's what we heard from everybody today.
And I think we can agree that if we have a Secretary of Education, shouldn't that be the core requirement a former New Mexico teacher?
Well, let me tell you.
Honestly,
I
think
don't
about the
disagree.
effectiveness of
I don't
this.
disagree. In fact, when we were running for governor, people would ask me, and I didn't have a short list, but people would ask me, the Secretary of Education, I believe, should come from probably the best bench we have in our state are our superintendents. Because the superintendents are in there every day working with principals, working with teachers, and let's be very frank, and we have kids, I see it all the time. The teacher is the most important, next to my wife and I, the teacher is the most important person in that kid's life.
School rankings, I'm going to tell you this. If you get your kid in the right teacher's classes, they'll be successful.
Absolutely.
I've seen it. I am telling you, this is the forgotten conversation. They keep thinking about all of these changes and the best thing we can do for New Mexico schools off the top is support the teachers.
Well, and I think, and again, this new administration is going to give people raises, and that's great, but we are still ranked 48th in teacher salary. I actually looked at the report today. We're ranked 48th in teacher salary. We're almost
and let me tell you
almost $40,000 less than the top 10 states in our country.
And let me tell you the thing about the raise. If you raise the pay 6%, and healthcare and all your expenses go up 10%, you have a net loss of 4% raise.
Well, that's
we were actually, well, I'll tell you a funny story. We were actually texting each other pictures, teachers, of on the raise, on our paycheck, there was a line item that said raise, and it was 25 cents.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. No, I agree,
so
and that's
we
why
we agree that if you want better schools, you've got to pay the
one
most important
of the things
people.
we started the show out tonight is one of the things is, and we're going to discuss this next week, but one of the things is oil and gas and renewables.
Yes.
But look, we can do oil and gas better, but it generates $7.8 billion, and it generates our educational fund by almost 50%.
Yeah.
And so the point is we have to take those monies. It looks like for the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to have $1 billion+ of surplus.
And they're going to spend it all.
Well, we need, but my point is, let's spend it towards teacher salaries, and we should build in 3% increases every year.
See, what we're saying is, when you get a highly qualified teacher and pay them, because this is the big myth. Let me debunk a myth. Teachers get paid for their summers. They do not get paid.
Right.
You sign a contract, it's an 8-month contract, and then APS keeps all our money and divvies it up to us. Used to be back in the day, at the end of your contract, you could get a payout, right?
Right.
And you would get all of your money. I don't need APS to pay me over the summer. I can manage my own money. So one of the incentives I think could make it very attractive is if at the end of the contract you get your full payout.
So we agree with that, but one of the other things is we have to look at programs for kids to keep kids engaged. I mean, we're talking about coding programs.
Yep.
California, my nieces who are 11 and 12, 13 years of age out in California have been doing coding programs, and they're never going to be coders.
No, but it gives them
but
a taste.
It gives them a taste,
Now
and you got to create. And what we heard from the activities directors, from the director, the executive director of New Mexico Athletic Associations, is we have to create opportunities and pathways, and I think that's what we agree on.
I think she said every kid needs a place to fit.
I need the place to fit.
And so if we're going to spend money, let's create different puzzle pieces to fit kids into. And one of them is, I'll tell you, in terms of the coding, my daughter actually coded. So she's at New Mexico International School.
Right.
That's a charter. And one of the things, they bring in Apple, and she does some basic coding. Like you said, I don't know that it's getting, but it's giving her a taste. And I think in that's very important.
And what both teachers said was each kid is different. They don't think it's a boy-girl thing. And I'm not saying it's a boy-girl thing. What I've seen in the structure of my kids going through elementary school right now is that structure of sitting at a desk, educating and not doing project learning, not failing and seeing successes at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it hurts boys more than girls. We've talked about that, I know, and you have one of each. But my point is like you have to allow a kid to learn how that kid learns the best, and we have to have flexibility with that, and then create those opportunities.
I'll just give you, for instance, my son is a very well-behaved student, and he stands at his desk. He doesn't like sitting.
Right.
You know, and allowing, and I was blessed enough where the teachers got him because he wasn't obnoxious about it. He just liked to stand and do his work. Because for him, it helped him.
See, and unfortunately, we had a teacher last year with one of our kids that she didn't like anybody maneuvering out of her structure, and we found out
that's just
and we found out besides my son, there were 2 other boys in the class that were literally being put in timeout and being penalized because they wanted to learn a different way.
So things we can definitely come to the middle on are esports activities. I'm actually coming around to esports.
But we're also talking about, I think what we heard too is we get $800 million of federal funding.
Make sure teachers get some of that money.
Well, give us our money. Let us educate our kids from the bottom up. I mean,
get rid of the federal
superintendent
Department of
said
Education.
39 districts with less than 200 kids. There's no way someone in D.C. I did not know that, by the way. There's no way someone from D.C. is going to be able to do that.
No, there's no way somebody in D.C. is going to understand a kid from the South Valley.
That's why if any of our political leaders are listening, we need to educate our kids from the bottom up. We need
you to understand this, and you need to give teachers a voice in the process. If there's an evaluation system, the teachers should be sitting as a board to oversee that.
And input in that.
And input in that.
Absolutely.
So when we come back.
Yeah, we're going to go to commercial. I want to thank P&M, Indigo Mortgage, and Ryan Sewing and Vacuum so much for our sponsors today. We'll be back right after this message.
Huge for us. Thank you.
We are connected by rivers, by mountain ranges, by unique culture. But what connects us more than ever? Renewable energy from wind and solar. P&M delivers renewable energy every day to our homes, businesses, and institutions across the state.
And they are committed to 100% emissions-free energy by 2040.
After all, we call this home too. P&M, together for New Mexico.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Jeff Apodaca, former governor candidate, Eric Strauss, News Radio, KKOB radio talk show host. You can find me on the weekends every Saturday and Sunday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Tune in to that show. It's fun. Well, Jeff's been on it several times.
Oh, yeah, and the Viper Room loves me. And you can follow us online at Let's Meet in the Middle. Yep. You can also email us at meetinthemiddlenm.com. And also I'm on Democrats for Democracy.
Yep. Brett Kokonitis was on my show, actually.
New Mexico Minute.
Kokonitis.
He was the founder. He's no longer with us right now but he was the founder.
Good guy though. Good guy. Got it off the ground and then.
But I think today's show was a great wrap up of education. We both thought education was important. We knew it wasn't going to be a lot of controversy one side versus the other.
And it doesn't always have to be.
Right. We have to talk about solutions and solving our problems.
At the end of the day, I think people need to understand something about this, about Jeff and I, is we really want to see this state move in a positive direction.
Absolutely.
And if somebody has a vision for that, reach out to us on Facebook. You know, you can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. And let us come on and help us to solve some problems. Because I think that's really why we're doing this in the first place.
No, and I mean, and you can follow us and ask questions about that. But I agree. We need I'm tired of being at the bottom. And we came up with some great ideas today. Yeah, I mean, we came up with some great ideas today about how we can educate our kids and become better at it.
And quit watching money go to top-heavy programs. Let's make sure that money that is going towards education goes to the teachers and into the classrooms. Because that's going to be the most effective use of our money.
Absolutely. And if anybody could take anything away, it's basically teachers are the most important people involved in our kids' lives. Speaking of money,
foundation of everything.
Speaking of money,
yeah.
Next week, oil and gas versus
oil
renewables, where our money comes
That's
from.
where we're going to have some difference.
New Mexico,
opinion.
Have a great week. Never give up.
Go out and make a difference in the world.
Find us on Facebook at Let's Meet in the Middle, or you can email us at meetinthemiddlenm@gmail.com. This is a production of the Sun Broadcasting Network.